What if I told you there's a world out there with the most beautiful gleaming colors? A world full of mesmerizing treasures where you find joy and purity and abundance. What if I told you that you could find an endless universe within yourself? Are you ready for a journey? Then come with us and discover the colors of the universe. Welcome to the Colors of the Universe here on Ascension Radio Studio 3. I'm Evie, your host, and today my guest is Freya Ferdinand. Freya, how are you?
I'm great today, Eve. How are you?
I'm good. It's crazy times, and I feel that the vibrations are going up and down all the time, but today is a good day.
Yeah,
So,
they are. It's really crazy.
yeah. Yeah, for today, I thought we could talk about the topic division because at the moment there's so much going on, and I try to form my opinion about what's going on. I see lots of humanity rising up, but I also see lots of division rising up. And right now, I cannot really decide what's there more or if they are both there equally. What's your opinion of that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think it's a very interesting time right now. And so a lot of what we see is the deep state's hand, sort of involved in what's going on, stirring the pot, taking advantage of unfortunate situations. But, you can really start to see the invisible hand and how they're orchestrating these events that are causing, uprisings and division, not just in this country, but all over the world. And so if you take a step back from that, it starts to become a little bit more clear that this movement is not organic. And a lot of people feel that it's a good cause and they want to get behind it, or some people are feeling obligated to get behind, this movement with Black Lives Matter. And that's why it's important to do your research, because as we in the truther community know, as we research, we then come to understand more and more what's going on behind the scenes. So in terms of this divisive hand, this invisible divisive hand that is moving on the public, I find it interesting that we have, sort of our more liberal community just going along with it, even if they have reservations deep down inside where they're like, this seems strange or this seems extreme, but they feel the pressure to go along with it because what else do they do? Where else do they go? And then you see, I guess there's three types of people, so that would be the first. And then you see people sort of in the middle that are awakening because these events seem very orchestrated, or it leaves room for questions. And they finally have the opportunity to ask those questions and to notice what's going on, because many of us are still, quarantined in our homes, so we have the time. And then you have those of us in the community that sort of are seasoned to this type of false flag event, if you want to use that term. So we already can recognize the signs when something is not organic. So you have these groups of people sort of manifesting as we move through these events sweeping across the country. And what's happening is those of us who are not in the liberal category, it's forcing us to sort of like rise up and take a stand. You know, we had these events where Antifa was marching through the streets, and I saw a video recently of, you know, just protesters completely out of control in places like New York City, and walking down, you know, through the shopping area and just breaking windows and raiding and looting people's businesses. And then you have people inside these businesses trying to negotiate with these protesters that are protesting under the guise of a peaceful protest, yet something more nefarious is going on during the protest. So you have these people that are forced to represent themselves because of these actions that are going on from the other side that are, like I said, so extreme. They're forcing the hand of normal everyday citizens to sort of take a stand. And so my feeling on that is sort of exactly what's supposed to happen if you sort of know what I mean. We're in the energy now, we're in the spirit now, where we're forced to take sides. And I believe this is more of a spiritual influence, a spiritual pressure, if you will, for those of us to come to a determination which side of these, not just from a political standpoint, not just from a patriot standpoint where, you know, we claim to be patriots, we love our country, but now we have to make it known, and those who are in the middle are forced to choose a side. So if that makes sense, I think this is, even on a spiritual level, happening on purpose.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting thought, because I've been thinking a lot these days. I would have never thought that there could be such an obvious division. So I have people that I thought would be awake, but they are falling completely for what is happening now. So I think they kind of started to wake up, but then lots of things happened in this world, like climate change movement or everything that is happening this year. And suddenly they are very, very strongly about science, but the mainstream science. And that's something that kind of bothers me, because truthers have scientists too, but for some reason they are not being accepted. Or even if it's not truthers, if it's just doctors protesting in the streets against lockdown or vaccinations, etc., then still these doctors don't count. But one doctor in the mainstream media is all it needs to what's the word, to convince them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I would have never expected that people that I thought are super open-minded are actually limiting themselves by not thinking it might be true, or there might be some truth in what others say that they still don't want to believe. So what I'm always doing is, when people give me sources or links or their thoughts and opinions, I'm like, okay, right now I really don't think it's true, but because I actually know that the person who gives me this information is very intelligent, I still check that source. And I kind of have the feeling that they don't do the same, that they rather trust the media and people they don't know then at least questioning what of what I'm saying is true, since they know me as a good person or intelligent person, you know. And
Right.
so now I see people dividing so clearly, and I'm I'm kind of shocked that it's so obvious now.
Yes, I mean, that's an interesting side effect, right? Due to what's happened to us over thousands of years, this conditioning, a lot of people don't understand that we live in a very controlled environment. And a lot of things that we value and we're taught to value, and a lot of people even that we uphold and revere throughout our history, were manufactured. We live in a manufactured reality. I've often written about that on Facebook. The very concept of, you know, what's real still sort of eludes many of us because we live in a false reality. So even if there's someone who you may think is awake, you may think is a very bright person, educated individual, if that person is not taking the time to research, even what's in mainstream media, even a trusted source, and find more compelling information to either support or deny that information, then they really haven't awakened. And it's something that a lot of people do, even in the truther community. There's just so much information that's exchanged and it's accepted by all parties as true because someone of influence stated it, or someone of influence posted it, or someone we recognize in society may have said it. But part of the awakening process that I realized is literally to question everything. Question everything. Question, you know, your doctor's diagnosis, as we talked about before. Question, you know, laws. Question mainstream media. Question everything, and just go back and try to verify information before you actually believe it. I'm to the point where I don't even have opinions on new information that's presented to me, or even new concepts that people express to me. I literally have learned to be void of opinion, and it's something that's now a part of who I am. If you show me something, I might have a thought about it, but I don't allow myself to form an opinion because I realize that I don't know. There's so much information I've had to abandon. I recently was listening to a person that I listen to often. He's actually an FBI agent, and he admitted, and several other scientists have admitted in the past, that what we learn in the science community, what we learn in physics, is not reality. What we learn about mathematics is not necessarily true. There was a point where I was going to major in mathematics in my student career, and then I got to a point where we were using so much imaginary math that I decided I didn't want to do it because I didn't understand what was real anymore. And they get us used to the concept of not only not knowing what's real, but embracing concepts and parts of society that are not real at all, and having that be something we base our reality from. How does that even make sense? And at some point, I need my reality to make sense. So this division, in my opinion, is just a product of people not letting go of the false aspects of our reality, because we've built ourselves on these principles, if that makes sense, Eve. We've constructed ourselves around these principles and concepts that may or may not be real in in the true world, in reality. And so therefore, if we have to abandon any of these thoughts and concepts and belief systems and pieces of our reality, we are somehow deconstructing ourselves. So it's almost a knee-jerk reaction that people don't want to look deeper. People don't want to understand that something that they conceived or conceptualized in the past is no longer true. It no longer holds any weight. As we dismantle this matrix that we live in, we have to abandon pieces of ourselves. And some people are so in the ego, which is the truth of that state. They're so in the ego, and also with lack of knowledge and other combinations and other influences that we still value, that they can't step away, they can't separate themselves from an erroneous concept, a belief system. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was growing up, I believed in Santa Claus, you know, the little traditional thing we tell our children. A kind old man comes into your home and leaves presents for the children. So I believed in this concept way too long, much longer than I should have. Other children no longer believed in Santa. I didn't get the memo. I didn't have any other siblings to let me know. So I believed it. And the reason I believed it is because my parents told me it was true. Isn't that kind of an interesting concept, an interesting reason to continue to believe something that's not a lie? I'm sorry, that is a lie? Simply because my parents told me, right?
Yeah.
So I had no reason. I trusted my parents implicitly with all of my heart, and they told me something, and so that became a part of my reality. Santa is real because my parents would never lie to me. These are the people I trust more than anyone. And so I remember getting into a debate, sort of, you know, slash argument with another student, and he was saying, Santa's not real. And I said, yes, he was. I think I was about 12. I should have known by then. And so it became a spirited debate, and I'm saying, yes, he is, only because my parents told me I believed my parents. And then later on that year, I actually saw my parents putting my Christmas presents together and placing them under the tree. So that's when that sort of belief system came crashing down, and it was a little bit traumatic for me. But it was because I didn't question what my parents told me. And so a lot of adults are not very different than I was back then as a child, believing what my parents, the authority figure in my home, told me, to the point where even when presented with other concepts, I wasn't willing to listen or to hear or to change my opinion. So it had to be shown to me. And I think that's also kind of an important lesson in all of this. You know, we hope people are researching at this stage in the game. We hope people are taking the time to, you know, fact check the facts. You know, that's what I call it. It's very important to fact check what we believe are facts and to prove it to ourselves. You know, we're all adults now, and I was listening to some other people in the community recently, and they said, you know, the reason why we don't come out, the reason why the president doesn't come out and tell you everything from A to Z and what's going on is, you know, of course, some of it is very top secret national intelligence information, but then the other kind of underlying reason is, he says, you're all adults. You're all adults. You're not children anymore. There's no reason this administration should have to come out and spoon feed every single detail to you. He says it's much different when you go out and you hunt for those answers. He says, because then, he said something very interesting, you own that information when you work for it. When you follow the steps and the trails and breadcrumbs and come to conclusions, and then you know, find factual basis for whatever your conclusion is, you now own, you have like your stamp on that information. That information becomes a part of you, just as our false reality became a part of our reality through indoctrination. But now this is different because we sought that information out, and now it's hardwired into our brains. And we benefit on so many levels from doing the work ourselves. And so that's sort of the exercise, you know, this administration and other people are leading with. We can't come out and tell you everything that's happening because everyone isn't ready. But how about you research what we're doing? How about you follow along? And how about you become a part of this movement? Because all of this is for you at the end of the day. This is for you. This is for all of us. So we need to be active participants. And so in terms of the division, it's sort of, you know, a difference in perception, but also how far are we willing to go to actively participate in what's happening. And because of the fact that the powers that were controlling everything in of people, you know, they lead with a very tricky hand. They take advantage of very real tragedies and spin them. So if you're a heart-centered individual and you see something tragic like, you know, what happened with George Floyd, or what's going on with, you know, climate change, and you see reports, you know, that the animal population is being diminished, or we're polluting our environment, we're polluting our environment, we're depleting the ozone layer, we're polluting our oceans. You know, there's many, many people who have the right intentions. There's many people who care about our world, who care about our society, and want positive change. We really, you know, if we would not divide ourselves, you know, politically and in other ways, if we actually could come to the table peacefully, we would find out that we all share the same values. We're just going about obtaining those objectives in different ways, unfortunately. But I did a little experiment on Twitter one time, and I decided to talk to people on the other side, which technically I don't really believe in. It's just that, you know, I make different choices for myself. So I said, you know, I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to talk to people, and I'm going to look at what they're saying, and I'm going to look at what they're talking about and see if, you know, I didn't even know what it was. You know, I couldn't even categorize it. So I do this, and everyone's talking about what I'm talking about. Everyone's talking about missing children. Everyone's talking about, you know, how do we save the planet? How do we save the animals? You know, things that we need to change, things that we need to do. So we're not that much different than each other. Oh. And we have to manage our expectations as well. You know, that's another thing. Because we let people put ideas into our heads about the person across the aisle. I've seen a lot of, not a lot, but maybe a few social experiments where, you know, a Trump supporter goes into an Antifa rally and starts talking to the people, sort of tries to infiltrate to see if peace can be maintained, and nothing terrible happened. You know, people began dialoguing, and again, once again understood they have very similar concerns, and so things turned out well in every instance. So it isn't the majority of the left, so to speak, that's violent and wants to promote anarchy and bring in socialism and communism. It's still just a finite number of people who are sort of buying into the wrong idea. But we let other people tell us who our enemy is. And when we challenge those ideas and thoughts and concepts being presented to us, we find out that that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, really interesting thoughts. I really appreciate your thoughts. What bothers me a lot is that how can I say, people want peace, but they're still fighting. So I just put out information and I tell people, you don't have to believe this. This is my opinion. This is what I think is true. But you don't even have to read it or listen to it. And people comment and judge me or partially insult me. And I'm like, you want a peaceful world, right? I want a peaceful world too. Basically, and here's where we share a big point. Most people basically want the same. They want peace. But then they come and still follow the concept of division. And I mean, I have to reflect myself. Of course, I also sometimes follow that concept because it's just pretty difficult to always feel one with everyone, you know. Sometimes you're just like, I don't like this, I want to separate. But yeah, so one thing I really don't like to say is these people are sheeps and these people are not sheeps. These people are awake and these people are asleep. I mean, still sometimes I use that term like a few minutes ago, but I try to be very careful with that and not to put much judgment into it, because I keep saying everyone is more aware of some things and less aware of other things. And I really don't like this division. I don't like to be judged by others. There was someone telling me I should go see a doctor because I posted about adrenochrome and ritual abuse. And I find that pretty sad, because I even say, if you don't want to believe that, okay, I just put out the information. What's your fear? Why cannot we talk? Isn't this world full of people and every single person has their own view of the world? And in the end, our core is still the same. We still want peace.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I really love that you make it a point not to include judgment when dealing with people of differing belief systems, because that's a contributing factor to division. You know, in line with that, I tell people who know me, you know, I'll listen to anyone who has something to say. I'll sit down and talk to anyone, because I'm not the creator. I don't know everything. Even if I have opinions about something, I don't rest on those opinions as if it's this way and no other way can it be. I've had so many belief systems destroyed since I began my journey of sort of, you know, it's a knowledge-based journey, and it's a spiritual journey that causes you to see things differently. So it's a walk, and we all do the same walk, and we all take different paths, and that's completely fine. And sometimes there's something I should be doing differently, or I have some pieces of the puzzle, but I don't have them all. So I'm always open to talking to someone and listening to what they have to say, and then reassessing what they have to say through my belief system or the way that I learn and processing it, you know? So I don't believe that there's throwaway people in society. I don't believe that there is ever a time you shouldn't take the time to listen to someone and to be kind to someone else. And people are welcome to express their opinions, but understand an opinion is an opinion. Unless it's absolutely factual and fact-based, it's still just an opinion, and it is not the law, and we all have them. So we need to create, actively create a space for this in our interactions with one another. And then we could actually come together and unite as a people, in my opinion. But society has sort of trained us to be dismissive. We've been shown through these draconian measures how to interact with one another. People really need to look into the concept of mind control and just how prevalent it is. It's in the way that our parents raised us. It's in the way that, we're treated by authorities in our education system. It's in the way, we're treated by secular authority, by police officers, government. There's a draconian element to everything in the facet of our reality. And the reason I'm bringing this up and even chose to focus on it in my journey is because I need to know what this is so that I can correct it within myself. And that's what helps me come to the conclusion that I do not want to treat people that way. And I use some of the terminology because of where I spend a lot of my time. But when I'm being my individual self, that's not my thinking. And so I've learned to separate what I choose to do as a person and what I choose to, and the way the masses may conduct themselves and treat one another. There's a lot of that I really don't agree with. And I basically treat others the way I would like to be treated. And it's an important concept because if we actually put thought into that and took the time to do that, we would live in a fairly peaceful reality. I think so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are already so many religions that are so
Yeah.
different from each other. And most people say every religion should have their space. And I find it pretty sad that on the one hand, when people say, okay, every religion shall have their space and they can believe what they want, yada, yada, yada. And on the other hand, how can I say, they insult people who they call conspiracy theorists or other even worse words. And I'm like, okay, so you're okay with all kinds of religions that even include some questionable thoughts, but you're not okay with my own truth that I put out there? I don't go to any one of them and say what you think is wrong. I don't, and like you say, I want to treat them how I want to be treated. I don't want to be mean to them. I don't want to think of others as dumb or anything. But that's all things I had to hear. And I keep wondering why. Why are people thinking so negatively about others, especially if they know them as good people? Because I have many good friends with a completely different opinion, but to me, they are still friends. But the past weeks, while I was putting out more of what I find to be true, I've been wondering, do these people still see me as a friend? Or did they mentally unfriended me because of my opinion? You know?
Yeah, it's really an incredible thought, in a world where we value, or especially in this country, because I know everywhere doesn't have the freedom to speak your mind, but in this country we do. And I also found this very interesting because I've been bashed a lot because I choose to share what I really think and believe on my platform, on my social media pages, I'm very honest. I don't like to sugarcoat. I don't like what I believe is true, and I don't like to hide what I think and feel, because I'm trying really hard to be myself and not be a group or a group thinker, because I think personally those things are very dangerous, and it doesn't allow you to walk your own journey. You think you have to talk like someone else and walk like someone else and say what someone else has said, and you sort of get lost in the sauce, so to speak, right? So I think it's important to be honest, to be upfront, and be who you are. Having said that, we live in a land where we value the Bill of Rights, and the very first one, which means it's very important, is the freedom of speech. Yet we want to censor other people, or we're on social media platforms where we're being censored: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, on and on and on. You say something, they take it down, they remove it. We complain about censorship, but yet we feel like we should police someone else. How does that make sense? It really doesn't. We cannot be both the oppressed person and the oppressor. We cannot fight the system. I know fighting isn't really what we need to focus on, but I mean, we can't even call out the system or shine a spotlight on the system if we're still emulating the system's behavior. So we need to take a step back and look at ourselves. I think that's, really, really critical at this time that we're living in, because it's time for us to change as a people too, as the fabric of our country and our community and our world changes, as the landscape is now shifting into, at this point, our landscape is metamorphosing in so many different things, as so many different things at the same time. We cannot remain who we are as well. And we need to take a step back and look at ourselves and understand, if we want a better society, we just simply need to be better people ourselves. And that does not include downgrading another individual over their opinion. If I look at the sky and I think it's a certain color, and you look at the sky and you think it's a certain color, who's the authority on what color it really is? We simply just have two different opinions about the same thing, and they are legitimate to stand as whatever we say, because neither of us are authority on the sky. We didn't make the sky, we didn't color the sky, so there's no reason to debate it any further. And there's no reason to have bad feelings about, I said fuchsia and you said some other shade of purple, magenta. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're allowed to live and think and be free, and so am I. And we need to respect, those realities, because that's something that isn't going to change.
Yeah, and I think a lot about what's the problem when other people don't like my opinion, or even, of course, it's always good if I reflect myself. Like, when I don't like another person's opinion in a way that it really triggers me, I have to look inside myself and see, why does it even trigger me so badly? Why cannot I just say, okay, I really disagree, but so what? I'm still okay with that person. In the end, I'm okay with everyone, as long as they don't insult me or so. But some things trigger us more than others. And I really have to look inside for that. So
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot these past weeks about what's the fear of people who get triggered so much or who get so emotional when it's about so-called conspiracy theories. Is it just the media that is pushing their buttons? It's still there's still something in them that gets triggered. So I think it's a lot the collective trauma or the collective pain body that Eckhart Tolle describes very well, I think, and that there's a huge pain body, a pain body of the collective, of the world, or of specific cultures or genders or countries, that is very alive and is not healed at all. So I think that gets triggered a lot, especially in Germany with the wars there, and especially with the Second World War. It's so alive that I had the feeling when I talked to some people who are very upset about so-called conspiracy theories, that I'm not talking to them, but that I'm more talking to their collective pain body, the pain body that is still alive from the Second World War and the Third Reich. And I have the impression that some people are really afraid that we will have the same situation again in Germany. And yeah, so what do you think about that collective thing, and what do you think does trigger them?
I think the terminology you used, pain body, is very, very real. It's a very real concept. You know, there's reports out there that say that past trauma in a family lineage, for example, can be passed on to future generations. That's been acknowledged by the scientific community. But it doesn't have to be transferred necessarily through a bloodline or something like that. It can be transferred to a community of people, or a body of people, or a group of people, or a country. And it's very, very real. And again, that's, you know, it calls for self-inspection, introspection, self-healing. A lot of times we have to take a step back and separate ourselves from what we connect ourselves to on a daily basis. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be community, it could be a movement, it could be your country, your state. If you don't agree with your state's values or the direction that they're going in, it's important to be brave enough to separate yourself and find out what your truth is, what your reality should look like in respect to what's actually going on. So when we talk about triggers, you know, there's that expression that hurt people hurt other people. And so even when we didn't participate in the trauma, or the trauma wasn't directly affecting us, we still pay the price, so to speak. So in terms of like the Second World War and what happened with Germany, and people still live in fear, it's almost an appropriate response, because things have not been solved. You know, that's part of the healing process, to have a solution and a resolution. And when you look at things once again in the world mimicking what happened then, it's going to stir up that trauma. And that pain body is going to be activated. And so it doesn't, I think the thing that people miss is when you are triggered, and I have to think about, you know, times when maybe I was triggered by something, and I had to take a deep breath and say, okay, how am I going to respond to this? You know how parents train themselves to count to 10 before they discipline their children, or before they say, you know, yell at their child, or whatever their disciplinary style is. They have to collect themselves. And that's, you know, again, something we all should do. We should collect ourselves and be introspective, take a look inside and see, you know, where is the pressure point that's being pushed right now? Where is the button on me that's being pushed? How far back does it go? Where does it stem? And then now that I know these answers, how do I allow myself to respond? Do I just rush and say something that I'm going to regret? Do something that later is going to, like, take away my peace of mind? Or do I, like, take some time, think it through, and have a more adult response or a more calculated response? There's nothing wrong in doing that. We're human beings. We are not perfect. We do get triggered. We do act outside of our character at times, or maybe we are not as nice as we should be. But we should notice when those times arise, and we should try to have corrective action. We should correct that behavior when it manifests itself. But to your point, there is a such thing as an emotional pain body that does get activated, and that's why we need to be about personal healing. And the only way to focus and to create space and time for personal healing is to be able to separate ourselves, again, from concepts and belief systems and dogma and this reality versus my own personal reality, and then to make sort of internal adjustments, make plans to express yourself in a way that you actually can be proud of how you responded or how you handled a particular situation. But before I turn the point back to you, I want to say again about the draconian system that we were essentially brought up in. And so when we have these heavy-handed measures that are sort of inflicted upon us growing up, that becomes part of our internal programming. So if someone said harsh words to us, and it doesn't have to be your parents, your family member, you know, society is going to sort of serve that up to you in some form or another. Like, you're going to meet harshness in the world. And so as a reaction, as a human reaction, we tend to dole that back out at some point. Because if you don't work through the pain that you're receiving, you in turn release it by giving pain to someone else. And so that's what I think real triggers, that's where I think they lie. I think they come from this sort of prison-like system that we've been brought up in as human beings, where at some point in our lives we've been treated unfairly. At some point in our lives we've been treated unjustly. At some point in our lives something we thought should have happened didn't go the way we thought in a just manner. And so then we harbor these negative feelings. Well, I don't know why I didn't get out of that ticket because it wasn't my fault. I don't know why I was blamed for this at work. It wasn't my fault, and there's no justice served. So that's the reality of the world that we live in. And I've just learned over the years, if I don't get justice from the outside, then I have to then give justice to myself on the inside. I can't allow myself to turn on someone else because I have certain feelings that are unresolved. That's where I really think, you know, this negative reactionary behavior comes from. It's because we haven't done the internal work. And I mentioned before that I do spiritual counseling, and I've done this for a long time with the help of my guides since I was 18 years old, and I was an adult, and they came to me and they said, do you want to do this work with us? Are you ready? And I just said yes. I wasn't even sure what it was. Absolutely. I'm very curious as to why you're here in my life. And you've been in my life in the past, but they actually scared me when I was a child. So I said, go away, go away. You know, I don't know what's going on. Go away. And they went away as far as they stopped trying to deal with me directly and moved into just being a guiding force, an extended consciousness for myself, which was very helpful. But when I turned 18, it was so funny because I was 18 years old when they returned, right? So I was legally an adult. And they said, do you want to do this work with us? And I said, absolutely. I missed so much time, you know, being involved to this degree. And they started giving me messages to give to other people and strangers. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't want to walk up to a stranger and say something that I shouldn't know about. But I did it anyway. I worked through my, resistance, and I did it anyway. And then people would later come back to me or come up to me or would find me and say, that thing you said to me changed my life. It was the beginning of this new perspective, or what you said came true, and I now have a totally different outlook on life, and my life is better because of the words you said to me. Now, these words wouldn't mean anything to me, but it was some sort of message from, the divine or the cosmos, however you want to word that these people needed to hear in that time. So it was outside my frame of reference. And I did what I was, what was asked of me, and then I walked away. And then I would find these people again, and they would say that changed my life. It was the beginning of my personal awakening, or my personal realization that there's more to life than what meets the eye. And that I had, whatever their internal work was essentially presented to them, or their change in perception was presented to them. So we continued this work, over the years, and a lot of times I'll just meet someone randomly and become friends with them, and my guides will say, we would like to talk to this person. Can you ask them if they would be interested in doing a session with us, or, we think this person needs some assistance. And so this is part of the healing process. So a lot of the things that I'm saying right now in this conversation are things that I've learned over the years and things that I practice with my clients. Everything that happens externally has an antidote internally. So if there is an internal trigger, or if there's something outside of us that gets triggered and, sends off all types of confusion, chaos, bells and whistles, then we need to go within and heal that trigger, turn the button off, disarm ourselves. And then when we're met with a similar situation in the future, after we do that work, we respond differently. And so after doing this work so many years, I realized just how important it was. You know, I came to the understanding that if we all took time to ourselves and worked on ourselves, you know, I've gotten help from other people. I've done emotional code work. I've, you know, done self-healing. I've gone to, you know, spiritual therapists, so to speak, and had assistance. Anywhere I could get help, I went to get help. And then once I learned and put everything into practice, I now use that when I'm helping other people. And so, again, what I'm trying to say is this work is so massively important, and other people that do similar work, it's so massively important, because when we heal ourselves and we help heal people around us who need help, we're healing the world. We're putting the world back the way it's supposed to be, without all of this outside negative influencers that exist, seen and unseen. They're doing their jobs. They're doing their work. And that's when I learned the importance of doing our own work.
Yeah, what you describe about your guides coming to you and speaking through you, I experienced that a lot since my childhood when I was writing, or still when I am writing. More than often, I knew this message does not come from me, it came for me. Or many songs, so even if just some notes I've been writing down, it comes from a much deeper and at the same time much higher place than just from me. And so for me, that's a very, very natural thing. And I think that we are all supposed to be like that. We are all supposed to be connected in that way to something that is much deeper and much higher at the same time, that is much wiser than we are as a usual person. You know, there's that that daily persona that we are, and then there's that higher self that we are. And the more we can connect to that, the more we can actually act in a way that is best for all of us, I would say.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And, you know, that's where the word inspiration comes from, in spirit. You know, our famous writers and artists are all inspired. Something gives them an idea, a concept, a vision of what their painting should look like, and they go off and they're running and they create something, a wonderful piece of work or a wonderful piece of art. And these people who practice this every day probably have an idea that, you know, this information's coming from somewhere else. But then the majority, if you look at the majority of us, we're doing these functions in life every day, and we're not allowing that free flow of energy and knowledge that's there for us. We're sort of cut off from that. We're not open to it. We don't know it exists, or we don't take the time to acknowledge it, and we become sort of like drones, right? You know, we get up, we have our breakfast, cereal, or whatever, and then we get dressed and we go to work, we come home, we go to the gym, we read a book, and we go to sleep. That's why they have us in a routine, you know, where we don't have time to make these discoveries that are actually so important to our growth. You know, we're we're human beings and we grow up and we become adults and we become seniors, but we're still just children, right? We're as a society, humanity as a whole is still in its like juvenile phase. And we're trying to grow as adults and collect more information and improve our ways. If you look at society in the 1500s and you look at society now, we've clearly made a lot of progress, right? So you can see the evolution of humankind through our history. And now we're on to the next phase and we're kicking and screaming. You know, we're going from preteen years into maybe teen years, and we're kicking and screaming the whole way there. But it's what's required of us. So it's important to connect back up to the source of all life, the source of all things, whatever that is. I can't tell you what that is. I have my understanding of what that is. I cannot tell someone else what that is. They have to find out for themselves, and then maybe they can tell me what they think it is, and I'm open to it. But we have to stop being drones, for one, because we are. That routine makes us very drone-like and disconnected. And then we also have to stop being followers. And something that I notice, you know, on social media, I have a lot of friends that are older than I am. And I see them sort of like take on these behaviors of the general populace. And sometimes I'll look at them and I'll know what they do for a living, and I'll say, I'm a little bit surprised that you would say that you would post that, or you would comment that, because it's kind of like the average general opinion that I didn't think you would express, even if you thought so internally, if it's something you agreed with. You know, I see people using like kind of behavior. I see people displaying behaviors that I don't think are necessarily them, but they're just sort of like following the vibration that they're in, or the spirit that the conversation is in. And I'll see someone saying, you know, oh, the deep state, or, you know, the cabal can F off, or something like that. And I'm like, did you really say that? Aren't you a school teacher? You know? So I think people spend a lot of time going with the flow, is what I'm trying to say. Going with the flow instead of like maintaining their individuality and whatever their personal standards are. And they just sort of like become this, you know, group being, or I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but they sort of like get outside of themselves and just become this thing that they're surrounded by, like this machine of opinions or negative energy, or, you know, where they're not exercising self-control and all those things that maybe they do have in their, you know, personal lives. Because I don't think, you know, like maybe if you're a teacher, that you necessarily conduct yourself that way, you know, in your profession or around, you know, your family or something like that. So I'm like, why would you do that on social media? It's interesting, isn't it, that you feel like you should change right now. And I don't think you should, to be honest. I think you should continue to uphold yourself in the standards that you have, you know, normally. So, and I'm going to try to explain that a little bit. So there's this saying that two different vibrations, if one is high and one is low, can't exist in the same space. The other one, either the higher vibration must come down or the lower vibration must go up. There's a regulating that happens. You know, if you're in the car with someone and maybe they're negative and you're very positive, if you remain positive, that person will become quiet. or that person will change and start being more positive simply because they're around you. And maybe when they go back to the regular environment, they're themselves again. But during that time when you're together, they might experience being more positive and what that feels like. So we should always be maintaining who we are and not giving in to the environment and peer pressure, or this person said it, I feel like I should say it too, or I feel free to say it. Maybe you shouldn't say it. Maybe you should just observe. Maybe that person's just being themselves and being in their own frequency, and that's, what they do. You don't go to a bar and because a lot of people are drunk, assume that the good idea is for you to get drunk also if that's not what you do, right? But some people do that. You know what I mean? I don't know if this is the best example of what I'm trying to say, but I see people changing and sort of like lowering themselves and succumbing to, lower energy or more negative energy when they get around a group of people. And again, we have to not just do the inner work, but we have to decide what kind of person we want to be when we go back out in the social world or we go back out in society. Ask yourself, who do you see yourself as? How do you want to represent yourself? And how do you want others to see you? That's called your reputation.
Yeah.
And I think we should always be trying to uphold our reputation in everything that we do, especially when dealing with other people. So again, there's like this self-management thing that has to go on. And, when you get triggered, what's triggering you? How do you respond? Do you respond like everyone else? We can watch the news and see them bashing someone, like they bash the president or they'll bash anyone who they don't agree with, and there's nothing wrong with that. Well, there is something wrong with that because you're the pinnacle of society. You have a platform, and I think you should always have integrity regardless of your platform. It's not appropriate because you have an opinion or your news station has an opinion to disparage someone else because you disagree with them. See, these are the things that we're learning from our Draco-induced society. These are the behaviors and programs that we're learning. So the average person says, well, I saw that on TV, this bad behavior, they just programmed me. So my response is going to be something that isn't above bar because I've seen it happen and it was fine. So there's nothing wrong if I should do that, if I should talk to someone that way, if I should tell someone, whatever I don't want to say anything bad, but if I tell this person to F off because I don't like their opinion, I've already seen other people do it in higher positions, and it's fine. It's not fine. We have to go back to the basics. But again, we are acting out what we see. And I think that's the problem. Someone was terrible to me. I get to be terrible to someone else. We're mimicking.
Yeah. Or, most people just have learned to think very small of themselves. I don't know if small is the right word. So they don't think very high of themselves, or they don't know what's possible because their parents don't know what's possible, their grandparents don't know what's possible. And for some reason, I grew up thinking everything is possible. This whole world has always been so inspiring to me, and I always thought everything is possible, which made me quite impatient because I mostly thought it's possible sooner than it was, or I got very fixed on my ideas. It has to be possible in a very certain way. But for myself, I found out if you believe that everything is possible and you are open for it to happen in a way that you might not expect it, or with some changes around it, then yeah, everything is possible. So when I was a kid, I was thinking everyone will be so great. We are all so special. They all will be astronauts, or will invent something. They will write poems, or will be superstars, or policemen, firemen, fireworkers, or even uh, driving a garbage truck would be super special to me. So I thought everyone is so special around me, and everyone will do something really great. And then when when I go through Facebook and look at people that I grew up with, I'm like, okay, they became the adults that I never wanted to be. They seem to have quite an average normal life, which is, I mean, fine if they're happy. But I always thought I wouldn't be the only one doing crazy things later when I am an adult. I mean, to me, the things I do are not really crazy, but to others, they are. To others, they are like, why the heck is she doing that? Is she crazy? Has she lost her mind? Isn't that dangerous? Isn't it this? Isn't it that? Yeah, but when I was a kid, I thought all the other kids will also do all these things. But many of them, I don't know. They followed a regular or very common path. I mean, there's nothing bad about it, so I don't want to judge it. If it makes them happy, that's perfect, you know? Yeah, but I still have that feeling in me, and I'm really convinced that everyone is still so special. Everyone can or could do the greatest things if they just started to believe in it. So one friend of mine told me, yeah, wars and stuff, or like being unsatisfied with government or the government itself. It's all humans, and that's just how humans are. There's always some bad, some good, yada yada yada. And on the one hand, yeah, I understand him. He's right. There are these two forces of light and dark. But on the other hand, I'm kind of shocked. I think if I would think it's just human nature how some people act or politicians do their decisions, etc., I would limit myself a lot. So I have a deep knowledge that humans are not meant to be in war with each other. That they are not meant to hate each other. So, I mean, apparently they are meant to go through this that is happening right now, because otherwise, why would it happen? But still, there's so much potential. And if I thought that it's just human nature to have a big ego or something, then I'm like, wow, why would I limit myself like that? Why would I believe that only what I see is possible. So if there is no free energy, if there are no free energy devices being sold to us in stores, then I guess there is no free energy, or people just haven't invented that yet. Why why would I make that to my reality? Because my deep understanding leads me to the thought there already is free energy. And humans are so intelligent, they are able to figure out how to create devices for free energy. They are not dumb, and they weren't dumb centuries ago. So where are those devices, and why aren't they there yet? You know, there is Wi-Fi, and people don't question Wi-Fi anymore at all. People don't, well, maybe some, but many people don't question, okay, there's Wi-Fi, so I can stream a movie through the air, right? So how can I receive a movie on my computer that comes from where? From another computer hundreds of miles away. And in between are just some towers, but there's no cord and nothing. How can this movie arrive from my computer? So why is this technique possible, but free energy isn't? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I explained it well enough.
Yes, I absolutely know what you mean, and that's a good point that you brought up. People stopped questioning and just rested in one base of knowledge, right? They didn't keep questioning or keep asking, what is this talk about free energy? What are they talking about? Let me look into it. Let me try to research this. Let me see if I can find out for myself, or let me ask questions of someone who knows. You know, the curiosity goes away for certain people when it comes to certain subjects. Like you say, conspiracy theorists. They don't want to think about what we're thinking about. They don't want to question what we're questioning. They don't want to investigate what we're investigating. Why is that? Well, it's because of social conditioning. Because someone said, oh, those people don't know what they're talking about. And so the person just listened. Said, yeah, those people don't know what they're talking about. What he or she said, that's what I believe. And so we live in this, spoon-fed society where people don't explore their curiosity anymore. They just want to be told what's true, what isn't true. This is your box, get into it and put the lid on, Put the lid on your curiosity. And now you're a normal person. Normal people don't ask questions. Normal people don't ask questions that seem ridiculous. Normal people don't question authority. Normal people don't have their own opinion. That's the conditioning of our society. And it's a detriment. It's a danger. Because we're not growing, we're not living, we're not learning, we're not expressing ourselves. We're just fitting into the box that they said we belong in. And like you said, people hundreds of years ago were not stupid as well. We've always been these amazing beings and these amazing people and these little sparks of creation. We've always been that from the dawn of time. But somehow these outside forces, these outside people, these outside voices told us that we were small, like you said earlier. People think of themselves so limitedly. People believe that they're small. People believe that they're stupid. People believe they can't have something wonderful and wondrous and give something just as wonderful back to the world. They believe their own bad press. Like you, I never believed in bad press. I had hope for everyone, for myself, for my friends, for future generations. But at some point, the world overtook them, if that makes sense, and convinced them, you know, you're never going to be this, you're never going to be that, you're never going to have a life, you're never going to be rich. And they believed it. They stopped trying. They believed it. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe one teacher said that I wasn't smart, and I believed that I wasn't smart. Maybe my parents said, you'll never amount to anything, and I believed I would never amount to anything. But if they looked deep inside, they would understand that that wasn't the truth. The truth remains to be seen. The truth has yet to be written. No one else can write your future or even your present for you. We write our own stories. We define our own realities. But sometimes you have to be so brave to do something crazy that we're doing right now, Eve. These conversations we're having, you have to be so brave sometimes to think outside of the box. That used to be my favorite expression. Think outside of the box. They would tell us at work or in school. Think of something new. Not because we're not capable of doing something like that, but because we very much are capable. So if you tell me to do that, to think outside of the box on a school project or a work project, why, at what point do I stop thinking outside the box? When do I stop doing that? Or and should I stop doing that? Should I stop being individual? Should I stop being different? Should I stop being expressive and creative?
Yeah.
Isn't it true that it's the great thinkers, the great creatives and inventors of this world who have changed the face of this world? So when do I stop being a thinker and creative spirit? When do I do that? It's the people that believe in the limitations placed upon them that stop inventing and creating. Because you have to be brave. You have to go against the grain. You have to say things other people haven't heard. You have to think thoughts other people haven't thought yet, and then be strong and brave enough to express those things to the masses or the general public, to your classmates, to your teammates, to your friends. Oh, what if my friends think I'm crazy? Well, you have to be brave to go into that environment.
I mean, that word is really relative. So I heard a lot from other people, yeah, you're so brave. And I'm like, I actually only followed my inner voice. So to others, some things that I've been doing look brave, but to me, they actually weren't. To me, other things are brave. It's, I don't know, it's brave to be a parent. You know, it's everything is so relative, or it's a matter of perspective. It's brave to have kids and to be brave enough to really love them and to let them grow and let them become who they are. It, I mean, there's so much bravery in the world that people find normal, and then that might be another reason to think low of themselves. They might not think very well of themselves because, oh, I'm just a parent, I just have a normal job, yada yada yada. But I've met so many incredible, inspiring people that maybe in the first look that they looked like they have a normal life. But then when I talk more to them and hear a bit more of their stories, it's so interesting. So everyone has their own story, has own great and special things in their experience. And they are all so unique and special, and all their stories make them to who they are now. Many people came to me and said, oh, your voice is so beautiful and I would like to sing, but I'm such a bad singer and my voice is awful. And every time I think, who told you your voice is awful? Who told you you cannot sing? Singing is a natural thing. Like, even if you don't hit every note, if your heart is in there, it will be great. And if you want to hit every note, then you can just practice. And as long as it's fun for you, it's the right thing to do. Don't think so low of yourself. Or even if you will never hit any note at all, you have your own potential and your own talents that you probably don't put much focus to, that you probably don't think very high of or don't take very important. I take it important because I see that. I see the light in your eyes. I see the sparkle. I see the passion. So I believe, or I know about the huge potential of humans, of every human being, no matter in what state they are. So let's say they don't have hands. Let's say they lost their hands or weren't born with hands. There are those people who start to learn to play the piano with their feet. That's brave, you know. There's so much treasure and greatness in this world. And if people would just start to believe in themselves and in potential that they have, and maybe learn to be a bit patient and make little steps, then this world can be amazing. And no matter what they do, if they do it out of their inner passion and out of an inner joy, they will make this world to a great place. And I think that's a bit missing, but I also see many people doing it more and more.
I agree with you so much. When I get to know people on social media or even meet new people and you find out that they have this wonderful talent, because that's something I think everyone has. Everyone has like this special talent that maybe no one else does, or no one else does as well as they do. If it's singing or drawing or painting or other things people haven't heard about, everyone does something and they do it really, really well. And if they ever tell me about it, I'm always so amazed, by this talent that they have. That, someone makes wood sculptures, or someone is a sculptor, or works on cars and, can refurbish an old car and turn it into a masterpiece. We all have something unique that we do, unique to ourselves, and with our own personal style, And so when I hear about these things, I'm like, oh my gosh, you restore, old furniture, and they show me pictures, and I'm like, it's so beautiful. And I'm overjoyed to see their talent and abilities and capabilities, and it always it endears you to that person. You start seeing them differently. You respect them more. You feel like you know them better, and you respect what they can do, especially knowing if it's something that you don't do yourself and can't do, no matter how many lessons. Maybe you could never, this person has a natural talent and ability. So we all have those things that we were born with, these gifts that we have. If we spent more time celebrating those gifts within ourselves, and then learning to celebrate those within other people, and we could foster this really positive, nurturing environment. And it wouldn't matter if someone wasn't raised with that, or someone didn't experience that on their journey, but they're having it now, and they're happy, and they have permission. That's one way we can change the world. And we can sort of meet the harshness, with this nurturing, positive energy. If anyone says anything, I have a friend, she's an engineer, and, her parents are very strict. You need to do something very important with your life. And she tells me, I really want to be a stand-up comedian, which I thought was so funny. And she's a very, very funny person. She's so hysterically funny. And I said, well, you should do it. And she says, no, my parents will kill me. And I said, well, do it anyway. Do it for you. Do it for yourself. Go on the weekends, go to a comedy club, and, take part in amateur hour and perform your comedy, because you're definitely good. You're definitely funny. And be yourself. We all have to step into these roles and be responsible, and all that's fine, but we still have to be who we are. We have to be brave enough to celebrate those parts of ourselves that sometimes we hide from others. But that's our true, our authentic self. And we should honor that person. I like to draw in my spare time. And I haven't done it in a really long time, but I remember being so happy and passionate about it. I would work on something, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and say, I want to fix this. I can make this better. I had a dream about this painting. I want to make it better. I'm not finished. Wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm working on it at 3, 4 in the morning. And I was so happy, so satisfied, because I was being myself and doing something that I love. And that's just so important. And it's important to know that we're not limited, that we are inspired by something greater than ourselves. And we have a responsibility to society to nurture those qualities and those passions and those things. There's people that love to help. I celebrate those people.
Can you repeat this real quick, because there was an interruption?
There's about nurses and doctors?
Just the last 30 seconds.
I'm not sure what I said, but I was basically the point I think I was trying to make is that we all have these pieces of ourselves that sometimes we hide because, our families want us to be something, our society wants us to be something, to take on a role. But that's not who we are. These are roles. I go to work, I do my job as an engineer. Am I an engineer on the inside? Nope, I'm not. That's a role that I take on. That's a part that I play in society to help society in whatever way that I contribute. But that is not who I am. Who I am is Freya, the person that you see on social media, the person talking to you right now. I'm not the role that I play in society. There's other things that define me, like my art. And I was just saying how passionate I would get about my drawings and my artwork. I would wake up in the middle of the night and decide that I could make something better. I could do something different to make the painting better. Or I had a new idea. I was inspired and I would jump up and I would stay up all night and all morning, but I would be so happy. Even if I had class that day or had to work that day, I was living off of that feeling of feeling authentic and creative and inspired and impassioned, that it didn't matter that I only slept 2 hours. I was just living off of that feeling of being fulfilled. And so we all have these things. We all have these passions that we need to express, that we need to contribute to society, that energy and that feeling and that flow. And we can't just play these roles and that's the end of our lives. We have to be ourselves, our creative selves, our curious selves, our, knowledge-seeking selves, our compassionate, empathetic selves. However we are on the inside, on the true core of ourselves, we owe it to ourselves to honor that, to nurture it, and then we owe it to ourselves to nurture and honor that in other people. When I see doctors and nurses that are that profession, because as children they always were assisting people, wanted people to feel good, wanted people to feel better and be healthy and be happy, and they go into these professions because of that spirit, that energy that was within them, and they share that gift with the world. I'm like, you're amazing. Thank God you listened to your inner voice and that, you acknowledged it and you turned your passion into your career, your job. And not only are you living out your dream, you're sharing it with everyone. Someone who's a firefighter, like you mentioned, or a police officer, or a teacher, or an astronaut, because they've always been curious about space. Share that with all of us, with the world. We owe it to ourselves and to humanity. And in that way, I think we make the world a better place, when we're being true to ourselves.
Absolutely. And I often feel very uncomfortable when what's the word? When people give me so many compliments at once and don't stop, like after a concert or something. Because it makes me feel like they see me as something special. And on the one hand, I like the energy, I like the positivity, I like these high vibes that are nurturing everyone. So it's a lot of good energy that feeds everyone. It feeds me, it feeds themselves. But I'm very uncomfortable when I'm treated like that I'm special and they are not able to do anything special, because that makes me want to go out less. I want to give what I can. I want to share my talents, my potential, and my work with others. But on the other hand, I don't want to be alone with this, It for me, it would be much easier if everyone would share their fantastic talents with everyone, so that everyone can complement everyone else, so everyone can complement everyone, so that everyone is special, because everyone is special, but many people are hiding it. And I'm very sensitive to energy, so of course I'm responsible for my own energy and for myself. But let's say it would be less of overcoming myself if more people would realize how great their potential is and how great they are and can be, because that creates an energy that is very uplifting for everyone, so yeah, to everyone out there, please believe in yourselves. It makes it easier for me.
Yeah, that's funny. But you're absolutely right, if we found our talents within ourselves and were able to freely express that, we would be happy. We would be happy people. That's why the system makes sure you don't have a lot of free time. There's people who play beautiful music in orchestras, and I just sit there and I'm like so amazed. I'm like, this is so beautiful. One of my favorite instruments, well, I love all the instruments, all the stringed instruments, to be honest, but I love to hear the cello and to watch someone play who's been playing forever. So beautiful, and watching them become one with the music, and it takes you away to another reality, and everyone has such a really special time listening, and you're like, thank you so much for sharing your gift with me. So if we all shared our gifts in that way and could, for a period of time, transport people through our gift to a beautiful place, and then we came back and, like you said, we all share in this energy, again, we're making the world a better place, because that energy doesn't go away right away. It stays with you. And so you're floating on cloud 9, right? People who perform on stage, actors and actresses, dancers, they all know this feeling. You go out there, and I grew up in theater and dancing, so you go out on stage and everyone's looking at you, and you might be nervous or worried, that you might make a mistake, but then you do a flawless performance and everyone cheers and everyone's so happy for you, and you're happy because you did that thing that's inside of you. You lived it, you turned it into reality. And so they leave and they're, feeling happy, and you leave and you're happy, and there's this beautiful exchange that happens, and you live in that energy for a period of time, and then you go back and do it again. So if we actually celebrated ourselves in that way and knew that we're all special and we all have these talents, and sometimes that energy is for you, Eve, and it's okay. It's okay, because what you're bringing, what you're giving to people is so important. That moment that you get to share when you're singing, when you're performing on stage, it's something that we need. Your art is what we need, which is why your audience is there. So don't be shy about giving it, because it's a healing, that's happening. There's a healing taking place when you perform and someone else plays the cello and someone else dances the ballet. That's why it exists in our society. Like, it has a purpose. It's our expression. It's our celebration of our talents and of life in those moments. And we need more of those moments, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's So on the one hand, I try to explain, I really like the energy in general, this positive energy that's behind it, but I don't like to be put higher. And so what I just would love is I give out what I have, and then people give back a great energy, and then the next person comes, and then the focus is on the next person, and we give, and that person gives energy to us, we give energy back to that person, and then it goes on, and I kind of think that's how it's supposed to be, you know. But what I also want to add is, I think we kind of grow up with thinking that being special or doing something special means to be in the center of attention. But to me, people who love numbers and who love to tidy up and have an organization, and people who love to do taxes and stuff, I really admire those people who have fun doing this or who have joy doing this, because that is something I have to force myself to. But I know there are people who are great at doing this and who love numbers and paperwork and stuff. And I think if everyone gets the opportunity just to find out who they are and what they want, and just be able to learn what they're interested in, then there will be a great balance. Then people will automatically do what's necessary and what they love to do. So I think one big thing why people are so unhappy in their jobs is because they were either told to get a certain job or go a certain direction, or they only have that job because they need to get some form of money in, you know. So as an example, how can I say? So my parents advised me to go into the office direction, to get an office job. And yeah, I mean, I was good with computers, but there were other things that were more fulfilling. So I actually wanted to either be a social worker or work in a kindergarten, or to just have a cleaning job, you know. But some of those jobs in society, they are seen as something lower, like you get less money for it, and it's a lower job, you know. And now I am pretty proud to have a job that I like. I work as a janitor and I really like it, and I have no clue why anyone should be ashamed of doing that work, because it's a very important work. It depends where you work. Some people see that work and appreciate it, and there might be people who just don't care, but it's like that everywhere. But this work is really nice for a job to get us some more money in, you know. Yeah, so I can say, looking back, I'm not sad that I experienced what I experienced, or that I didn't take the opportunities I would have liked to take, because it is what it is, and I'm here and I'm happy with my life. I have joy and I feel very, very wealthy. Although although we are very not wealthy on the outside, but that doesn't matter too much anymore. So yeah, so it's so important that everyone gets the opportunity to do what they really like to do, what they enjoy to do. And I enjoy cleaning, you know. Others enjoy working in a bank or being a mother, being a father. Others enjoy being in an office. Others others enjoy being a teacher. And if we could just get rid of all these limits in our minds, that any job is better or more important than another, it's not, because we all depend on each other. Every being is important and every job is important, you know. So yeah, whatever you guys out there want to do, believe that you can find a way to do it, even if it's just small steps, but it will improve your own life. It will increase your own joy, even if you just start doing it an hour a week. And then you, maybe after a certain time, you can do it an hour every day. And then after a certain time, it gets more and more if you just keep going. So that's what I learned for myself, that I really have to have patience and be happy about little steps. Because then the joy that comes up doing the things that I like is worth it.
Again, I agree with you. And I think what you said is so very important to everyone listening, to do what you're passionate about, to do what you love, and to find your joy. Because when you find your joy, you become joy, just like you stated so perfectly. You become that joy. But a lot of us buy into, what we talked about before, pressures and expectations of our parents and other people, or all of my friends are going to be this. I don't want to cut lawns. It
I'm
matters.
sorry, you just cut out again for like 10 seconds.
I wonder what's happening.
Too much joy in the air.
Boy, I feel so good having this conversation with you, by the way.
Right?
Yeah. I was just saying, if you want to be a gardener and that makes you happy, some people love plants and watching things grow and contributing to that. There's nothing wrong with being a gardener when all of your friends are stockbrokers and, senators or whatever the case may be. You're, like you said, you're not less than if you're not doing what other people are doing. The most important thing is that you're happy. If they're happy being a trader on Wall Street and that's their passion, more power to them. I didn't want to be an engineer. I learned to love it over time. I did not, and I struggled with it, because my brain didn't think that way. I'm more of an artist. But when I would tell my father, he would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Dad, I want to be an actress. That's what I want to do. I've always wanted to do it. I still want to do it. It hasn't changed anything." And I'm a less happy person. I mean, I don't want to be in Hollywood right now with everything that's going on. I'm glad I didn't do it, but I could still do Broadway or local things or whatever. Or who says I was even, meant to be famous, but that's what I've wanted to do since I could speak. And I didn't do it because my dad had he just would say, no, don't do that. It's going to be problematic. Do you want to be a starving artist? So I didn't do any of those things, that I kind of had natural talent for. I avoided them. And so I have this longing in my heart, to still do these things. And a part of me is unfulfilled, and I acknowledge that. I know in my being that I am not fulfilled. I like my job. I, have a passion for it now. I'm sort of in a different role that I really enjoy. And that's great, but I still want to be on a stage. And it's not for attention, because I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't seek attention. But the thing about that sort of creative outlet is you get to step into another role. You get to, when you're acting, you're playing a part. You get to put yourself aside and become this other person that's on the page. Or when you're dancing, there's always a theme. You're, the fairy godmother, or you're the maidens or the princesses or whatever. You're always someone else, and it's really fun to be someone else for a period of time and get outside of yourself. So, it's for that reason, and it's really enjoyable, and it's very soothing for my soul. And so I'm not doing that, and a part of me every day is grr, I have regrets that I'm not around a bunch of creative people and talking about creative things and working on my honing skills for my passion, and talking about dancing or reading lines with somebody. That's what I would rather be doing. And this is what I was saying. I ran into a friend that I've known since second grade. And we're all grown up, and we spent some time away from each other, and we reconnected, and she's a school teacher. And she says, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm an engineer. I work in aerospace." And she says, "Oh, you were always so smart." Well, all of my friends were smart. We were all equally smart. We were very serious about our grades and things like that. So I'm like, "Oh, you're funny." She's like, "I'm a teacher," and she loves her job. She loves working with kids, and she's telling me about that. And she says, "We don't have a lot of money, but we're happy, and we live by the beach, and everything's great, and we have children." And I'm like, "That's really wonderful." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I do, and I'm always really busy." And she says, "But are you happy?" And it just that question really hit me like a ton of bricks, because I never thought about, am I happy? Does this job make me happy? I just did what I was supposed to do, what's expected of me. And I never thought about in terms of, am I happy? And I'm like, no, actually I'm not happy, And then it was in that moment when I realized, what's important. She helped me realize that when, she's happy doing what she's doing, and it isn't acknowledged the same way my career is, and that's fine, but I'm not happy. I don't hate what I do, but that fulfillment and that joy where I want to tell everybody what I'm doing, and I want to tell everybody what I'm working on, and no, when I leave the office, I'm just like, and that stays there, and my day was however my day was. I don't want to talk about it. It's just going to happen again tomorrow. That's the reality of the situation. So it was funny how that question was just such a normal question, but it hit me really hard that I didn't pick something that made me happy. I picked something that would provide. And that's literally what I'm working for. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, and I think most people do that. And it's possible but difficult to find your happiness with that. So at one point, I changed my inner focus. I kept asking me, what do I really want? Because my interests are so various. They're so colorful. I have great interest in so many things, and I was always like, yeah, so I need to study this, I need to study this or that or this or that. But in the end, I just want to be happy. And I think it makes you stronger if you know and if you believe in that you will find a way to be happy, no matter the circumstances, no matter where you are, how you live, what people are around you, etc., etc. That if you focus on finding a way to inner joy, inner happiness, then you will find it. And then other decisions will come out of you. And your life will change, even if sometimes it's hard or bad things going on. I mean, you cannot control what happens around you, or sometimes you cannot control what happens to you. There are things coming our way that are not always very nice, but still, if you focus and believe that you will get through this, this will pass, and you will find a way to be happy, then you will find that way. And I think that will change your whole life.
I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think our time for today is over. So, do you want to spread out some last words for today?
Sure. I'm really thrilled at the direction this conversation took, because it always comes back to how can we be happier people? How can we better serve ourselves and then in return better serve humanity through that self-love and that belief we have in ourselves, and healthy egos and healthy self-images are what make a healthy being or person. And so when we present that healthy being to society, we've already started to make the world a better place. And again, when we nurture the healthy aspects of other people, their talents and perspectives and opinions, and we welcome those characteristics in other people, we're now serving society in a greater way and making the world a better place. So I think it's very helpful, and I'm glad we came to these conclusions toward, in this conversation, because I think that's very key to living the reality that each and every one of us deserves to live in. The end.
It sounded like an automatic voice that confused me for a second. Anyway, that was a really great conversation. I hope we can continue that really soon. I thank you so much for this great talk, and I hope the listeners will enjoy it as much as I did, or even more. And thank you everyone for listening. This was Colors of the Universe on Essential Radio, Studio 3.
Thank you for listening to Colors of the Universe here at Studio 3 on Ascension Radio. If you enjoy what we're doing, please send a donation via the PayPal button on radio.mpeg.org. Find more amazing content and updates on our Facebook page. And now, just be your colorful self and enjoy your day.